I dropped the empty coffee mug. I was standing in our Seattle condo kitchen, 7 months pregnant, my hands trembling as I watched my husband walk across the living room. Walk, not wheel, not transfer. Walk. David didn't know I was home. I'd left for my prenatal appointment an hour ago, but Dr. Martinez had to reschedule last minute. I came back to grab my phone charger, and there he was, pacing back and forth while talking on a video call, gesturing with both hands, standing perfectly straight. The man I'd married 18 months ago couldn't walk. The man I'd learned to navigate the world with, the man whose wheelchair I'd pushed through countless doorways, the man I'd redesigned our entire home for, was standing in our living room like he'd never spent a day in that chair. I must have made a sound because he turned. Our eyes met. His face went white. The mug shattered when it hit the floor. Let me back up. I need you to understand how we got here. 3 years ago, I was 34 and drowning in my mother's expectations. Sarah, your sister got married at 28. Your cousin Emily just announced her second pregnancy. What are you waiting for? She'd say this at every family dinner, every phone call, every chance she got. I was an event planner in Seattle. I loved my job. I was good at it. I'd built a successful business, coordinating corporate events and high-end weddings. But according to my mom, none of that mattered because I didn't have a husband and kids. The dating scene was brutal. Every guy I met wanted to talk about themselves, their ambitions, their gym routine. Or worse, they'd find out I made decent money, and suddenly they were interested in my client list, my connections, what I could do for their startup. Then I met David at a charity gala I was organizing for a tech nonprofit. He was sitting near the back, and I noticed him because he was one of the few people actually listening to the speakers instead of networking. He had this quiet intensity about him, and when our eyes met across the room, he smiled. He was in a wheelchair. The accident had happened 2 years before, he told me when we talked later. A drunk driver T-boned his car on I-5, shattered pelvis, spinal injuries. The doctors said he'd never walk again. We started talking, and it was different. He asked about my work because he genuinely wanted to know, not because he wanted something. He listened. When I mentioned my family pressure, he didn't judge. He just said, "Sounds exhausting." Over the next few months, we kept running into each other. Coffee shops, the public library, a farmer's market in Pike Place. Later, I realized these weren't coincidences. He was creating them. But at the time, it felt like fate. David was a tech consultant who worked from home. He specialized in accessibility software, which made sense given his situation. He lived alone in a ground-floor condo that he'd modified himself. He was self-sufficient, proud, and completely uninterested in being anyone's charity case. I fell hard. Not because of the wheelchair. Not in spite of it. Just because of who he was. He made me laugh. He called me out when I was overthinking something. He understood my work stress because he had his own. We'd spend hours talking about nothing and everything. My mom was skeptical at first. "Sarah, are you sure? That's a lot of responsibility." But when she met David, even she softened. He charmed her completely, talked about his work, his independence, his plans, made it clear he didn't need anyone to take care of him. 6 months in, I was spending most nights at his place. I learned how to navigate the city differently, which restaurants had proper wheelchair access, which curb cuts were reliable, how to advocate when places weren't accessible. It became second nature. David proposed on a Tuesday evening. No grand gesture. We were in his living room, and he just looked at me and said, "I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. We got married in a small ceremony at a garden venue I'd worked with before. I made sure every aspect was accessible. David's college roommate was his best man. My sister was my maid of honor. My mom cried the whole time. I cut back my hours after the wedding, not because David needed me to, but because I wanted to spend more time with him. We talked about having kids. David worried about it. "What if I can't do everything a father should do?" he'd say. I told him he was being ridiculous. We'd figure it out together. I got pregnant 5 months after the wedding. We were thrilled, terrified but thrilled. David threw himself into preparation mode. He researched adaptive parenting techniques. We talked to other parents with disabilities. He was determined to be fully present, fully capable. I started working from home more. My business partner, Rebecca, understood. She took over most of the on-site coordination while I handled planning and client relations from the condo. Everything was perfect. We were building a life together. We'd turned one of the spare rooms into a nursery. Gender-neutral yellow walls. A crib David had picked out himself. We'd spent a Sunday afternoon assembling it together, me reading instructions while he worked. That's what I kept thinking about as I stood in the kitchen, staring at my husband who was standing upright in our living room. "Sarah," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "You're standing," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. "You're standing." "I can explain." "You're standing." I couldn't stop saying it. My brain couldn't process anything else. David took a step toward me. An actual step. Fluid. Natural. Like he'd been walking every day of his life. "Don't," I said. "Don't come near me. Please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" My voice was getting louder. "Explain how you've been lying to me for 3 years? Explain how I've spent 3 years pushing your wheelchair, adapting my entire life, and you could walk the whole time? It's not like that." "Then what is it like, David? Please, enlighten me." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times, but now it looked different. Everything looked different. After the accident, he started, I did intensive physical therapy. The doctors were surprised. The injuries weren't as severe as they initially thought. After 6 months, I could walk again. Not perfectly at first, but eventually, yes, normally. That was almost 4 years ago. 3.5. And you've been pretending for 3.5 years? Not pretending. Not exactly. What do you call it then? He sat down on the couch. Sat normally, not the careful transfer he always did. Even that small thing felt like a betrayal. "When I could walk again," he said quietly, "I told Catherine, my fiancée. Remember I told you about her?" I remembered. She'd left him after the accident, or that's what he'd told me. 6 months after the crash, she returned the ring. Said she couldn't handle his disability. That's what he'd said. What about her? That's not exactly what happened. She left, yes. But not because I was in the wheelchair. She left because I recovered. I sat down in the kitchen chair. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. "I don't understand." Catherine was a nurse. We met at a hospital fundraiser. When I had the accident, she was there through all of it. She was kind, attentive, caring. She said she wanted to help me through it. He paused, and I could see pain in his face. Real pain. But I didn't care. When I started improving, she changed. She'd get annoyed when I'd want to try something on my own. She'd insist on doing things for me even when I didn't need help. The therapist noticed it, called it something, Munchausen by proxy, but not exactly. She needed me to need her. "So you broke up?" "No." I told her I was getting better, that I could walk again. I thought she'd be happy. Instead, she got angry. Said I was giving up too easily. That I needed to accept my limitations. She literally tried to convince me to stop physical therapy. He looked at me, and his eyes were wet. The day I walked across her apartment to prove I was okay, she looked disgusted. She said, "I fell in love with someone brave enough to accept his disability. You're not that person." And she left. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I didn't understand it then. I was devastated. I thought maybe she was right. Maybe I should have stayed in the chair. Maybe being disabled was somehow nobler than recovering. That's insane. I know. But when you're in that headspace, nothing makes sense. So I stayed in the chair. I told everyone I'd plateaued, that the improvements had stopped. I convinced myself it was easier this way. For 3 years? At first, it was just easier than explaining. Easier than dealing with Catherine's family, who all knew me as the guy in the wheelchair. Easier than facing my own confusion about what had happened. And then you met me. And then I met you. He looked directly at me now. You were different from anyone I'd ever known. You were kind, but you weren't trying to fix me. You saw me as a whole person. You adapted to the wheelchair, but you never made it the center of everything. So you kept lying. I told myself I'd tell you. Every day, I planned to tell you. But then we'd have such a good day, and I'd think, I'll tell her tomorrow. And then tomorrow would come, and I'd lose my nerve. You let me marry you. I know. You let me get pregnant. I know. You watched me redesign my entire business, my entire life, for a disability that doesn't exist. I know. His voice cracked. Sarah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stood up. The room was spinning. I need you to leave. What? I need you to leave this apartment right now. Sarah, please. Leave! I was screaming now. Get out! I can't look at you. He stood up, grabbed his jacket and his actual car keys because of course he drove himself everywhere and I just never knew, and walked out the door. Walked. I slid down the kitchen wall and sat on the floor among the broken pieces of the mug and cried until I had no tears left. The next few days were a blur. I called Rebecca and told her I needed time off. I didn't tell her why. I couldn't explain it even to myself. David texted constantly, called, left voicemails. I didn't respond. My sister came over on day 3. Mom's worried, she said. You haven't answered her calls either. I can't talk to her right now. What happened? I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I was done, she said, That's insane. I know. But Sarah, do you love him? That's not the point. I think it might be the only point. He lied to me for 3 years, Emily. 3 years. He let me build my entire life around a lie. Did he, though? I stared at her. Think about it, she said. Did he ask you to change your life? Did he ask you to cut back hours or push his wheelchair or redesign anything? That's not fair. I'm not defending the lying. What he did was wrong. I'm just asking whether your life together was built on his disability or on something else. I didn't have an answer. She left me with the number of her therapist. Just call her, she said. Even if you don't want to save the marriage, you need to process this. I made an appointment for the following week. Dr. Chen's office was in Capitol Hill, in one of those converted houses that Seattle therapists love. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a direct way of speaking. Tell me what happened, she said. I told her the whole story. She listened, taking occasional notes. When I finished, she asked, What's the worst part for you? The lying. The betrayal of trust. Of course. That's valid. But underneath the lying, what specifically hurts the most? I thought about it. That I don't know who I married. The person I fell in love with doesn't exist. Doesn't he? What? Walk me through how David presented himself when you met. What did he tell you about who he was? He was a tech consultant. He specialized in accessibility software. He lived independently. He was smart, funny, thoughtful. Is any of that untrue? He told me he was disabled. But did he present himself as someone who needed to be taken care of? I thought back. No, he was very clear that he was independent. And you fell in love with him because he needed you? No, I fell in love with him because he saw me. He listened. He made me feel valued for who I was, not what I could provide. So, the foundation of your relationship wasn't his disability. But the disability was part of who he was, who I thought he was. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Sarah, I'm going to be direct with you. What David did was wrong. The deception was wrong. You have every right to be angry. But I want you to consider something. What? You said your mother pressured you about marriage for years. You said the men you dated wanted something from you. Your business connections, your money, your network. How did you feel about that? Used. And when you met David, someone who couldn't use you in those traditional ways, how did you feel? I opened my mouth and closed it again. Sarah, I'm not saying you chose David because of his disability, but I am asking whether his disability made him feel safe, made him feel like someone who couldn't hurt you in the ways you'd been hurt before. I felt like I'd been punched. Are you saying I used him? I'm saying relationships are complex. I'm saying that maybe you both brought your wounds into this relationship, and maybe you both found something you needed. His wound was about being abandoned when he was vulnerable. Your wound was about being valued only for what you could provide. I sat in silence for a long time. I still don't know if I can forgive him, I finally said. That's okay. Forgiveness isn't required, but understanding might help you figure out what you want. I left her office with more questions than answers. That night, I finally read David's messages. Dozens of them. Apologies, explanations, desperate pleas. One stood out. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I've destroyed your trust. But I need you to know that every moment we've shared has been real. My love for you is real. The life we've built is real. The only lie was about my legs. Everything else was the truth. I sat on the couch we'd picked out together, in the condo we'd turned into a home, with our baby kicking inside me, and tried to figure out what truth even meant anymore. I texted him, I need time, but we need to talk. He responded immediately, whenever you're ready, I'm here. 2 weeks later, we met at a coffee shop near Green Lake. Neutral territory. I'd asked him to meet me there because I needed to see him in public, where I wouldn't fall apart. He arrived early. I saw him through the window, sitting at a corner table, looking nervous. He was walking, obviously. No wheelchair, no pretense. When I sat down, neither of us knew how to start. I talked to a therapist, I finally said. That's good. She helped me understand some things. About both of us. He waited. She made me realize that I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest. Can you do that? Yes. Anything. Did you ever love me because I accepted your disability? Was I just convenient? No? His answer was immediate. Sarah, I loved you before you even knew about the wheelchair. I fell in love with you at that gala, watching you coordinate everything, seeing how you treated everyone with respect, from the donors to the catering staff. You were real. You were kind without being patronizing. You had no idea who I was or what I could do for you, and you still made time to talk to me. Then why did you keep lying? Because I was a coward. He looked down at his hands. Every day I wanted to tell you, every single day, but I was terrified you'd leave, like Catherine did, and the longer I waited, the worse it got, because then I wasn't just lying about my legs, I was lying about having lied. You understand how that sounds, right? You were afraid I'd leave, so you created a situation guaranteed to make me leave. I know, it doesn't make sense, but fear doesn't make sense. The therapist said something that I can't stop thinking about, I said. She asked me if I felt safe with you because of the wheelchair, because you couldn't use me the way other men had. He looked up sharply. Did you? I don't know. Maybe. At first, maybe unconsciously, yes. But David, that's not why I stayed. That's not why I married you. I married you because you made me laugh. Because you challenged me to be better. Because when I was with you, I felt like myself, not like someone performing for my mother's approval. I know. I felt the same way. But here's what I'm struggling with. If we're going to move forward, I need to believe that we can be honest with each other about everything. No more hiding. We can. I promise you, no more lies. It's not just about you not lying. It's about me being willing to hear hard truths, because the therapist was right. Part of why I fell for you was because you felt safe. And I need to look at that. I need to understand why I made that choice. He reached across the table and stopped just short of touching my hand. Where does this leave us? I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved for 3 years. This man who'd made a terrible, sustained, inexcusable choice. This man who was still somehow the person I'd fallen in love with. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. I don't know if I can fully trust you again. That's fair. But I'm willing to try. For our baby. And for us. If we do couples therapy, real therapy, where we both show up honestly. His eyes filled with tears. Yes, anything, whatever you need. And David, you need to tell everyone. Your family, my family, everyone who knew you in that wheelchair. You need to own this completely. I will. Starting tomorrow. We're having dinner with my parents, and you're going to tell them. He nodded. Okay, that was 9 months ago. I won't lie and say it's been easy. We're still in therapy. Some days I'm still angry. Some days I look at him and feel the betrayal fresh all over again. But some days I look at him holding our daughter, walking her around the nursery at 3 a.m, singing off-key lullabies, and I see the man I married. Not the one in the wheelchair. Not the one who lied. Just David. Flawed. Human. Trying. We named her Hope. It felt right. My mother was shocked when we told her the truth. She actually gasped. But after the initial drama, she surprised me. "Sarah," she said, "you've spent your whole life trying to please everyone. Maybe it's time to figure out what you actually want." What I want is messy. I want the past 3 years to have been different. I want to have known the truth from the start. But I also want this life we've built. I want our daughter. I want the man who's learning to be honest, even when it's terrifying. Dr. Chen says, trust is rebuilt slowly, day by day, choice by choice. David chose to lie for 3 years. Now he's choosing honesty. Every day, he's choosing it. And every day, I'm choosing whether to stay. Some days it feels impossible. Some days it feels like the only choice that makes sense. Last week, David had to take the wheelchair out of storage. We're donating it to a mobility equipment nonprofit. As he wheeled it to the car, he started crying. "I'm not mourning the chair," he said. "I'm mourning who I was when I needed to hide in it." I held him while he cried, our daughter asleep against my shoulder. "I'm not going to tell you we lived happily ever after. I'm not going to tell you I've completely forgiven him or that our marriage is perfect now. But I'm going to tell you this. Love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone, flaws and all, and letting them choose you back. It's about deciding that the relationship you're building matters more than the person you wish they'd been." David made a terrible choice. But he's not just that choice. And I made a choice too, to see him as safe because of his disability. We both brought our wounds to this relationship. Now we're learning to heal them together. Some days I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd never found out. If David had kept the secret forever, would I have been happy? Would ignorance have been bliss? But then I look at Hope, and I realize that this is the life we have, not the one we might have had. This one, complicated, messy, real, and maybe that's enough. Maybe choosing to stay, knowing everything, means more than staying because you don't know any better. Last night, David was reading Hope a bedtime story. I watched from the doorway as he walked her around the nursery, bouncing her gently. He saw me watching and smiled. "What?" he asked. "Nothing. Just watching you be a dad. I'm terrified I'm doing it wrong. We're both terrified. That's how you know you're doing it right." After Hope fell asleep, we sat on the couch together, not touching, but close. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Regret what?" "Staying, trying, all of this." I thought about it. Honestly thought about it. "Ask me again in a year," I said. "Ask me in 5 years. Ask me when Hope's old enough to understand what happened. I don't know what I'll say then. But right now, I'm here. I'm choosing to be here. That's all I can give you." He nodded. "That's enough. The truth is, I'm still figuring it out. Some days I believe we can make it. Some days I'm not sure we should. But every day, I wake up and make the choice. That's all any of us can do, really. Make the choice. Live with it. Make it again tomorrow." I picked up the pieces of that broken coffee mug, by the way. I saved them in a box in the back of our closet. I'm not sure why. Maybe as a reminder of the moment everything shattered. Maybe as proof that broken things don't always stay broken. Or maybe just because sometimes you need to remember how it felt when your world fell apart so you can appreciate what it took to put it back together. Different, not the same, but together.